Hello, I am Reid the Rules Guy, a lifelong multi-sport referee and rules expert, and I am here to give you unbiased thoughts and interpretations of rule applications across the wide world of sports. Today we'll be taking a look at a baseball call that MLB claims umpires have been calling wrong for years, one that I've actually discussed before on ESPN radio right here in Kansas City when it came up a few years ago in a Royals-Yankees game in 2023. And it has come up many times before that. One of the most notable times was in a Mets game where Taijuan Walker tossed the ball away and ended up leading to multiple runs scoring for the Pittsburgh Pirates. And this rule relates to something called the parallax effect, where a ball is sitting over top of the line, and because it is a sphere, a 3D object, it looks like it's sitting on the line, but it's actually not touching it, and the umpire has to decide whether that ball is fair or foul. And when you look to the rule book, it does not provide much help in how you should interpret that rule and make that call. The official baseball rule book, which you can find online from MLB, describes a fair ball as thus. It is a very wordy rule. It says a fair ball is a batted ball that settles on fair ground between home and first base or between home and third base, or that is on or over fair territory when bounding to the outfield past first or third base, or that touches first, second, or third base, or that first falls on fair territory on or beyond first base or third base, or that while on or over fair territory touches the person of an umpire or player, or that while over fair territory passes out of the playing field in flight. The part that we are looking at here is that while on or over fair territory touches the person of an umpire or player. Where this controversy stems from is that because a player has touched the ball while it has settled over the fair foul line on the infield. But each time that this has happened, when they pick it up, the umpire immediately signals that it is fair. And that's because the ball is sitting over the line, which is exactly what this rule says. It says over fair territory. How else could you interpret it? If you see the ball sitting over the white line, it is resting over fair territory and then touched by the person of a player. Now, I don't think that that's exactly what that part of the rule is attempting to say. When you read it, it seems like it's trying to refer to a fly ball, something that hits an umpire or a player in the air in fair territory should be a fair ball. I do not think that they were meaning for it to refer to a ball that is along the ground, but there's no other specific wording that would say anything otherwise. So MLB offered a clarification on this in the MLB Umpires Manual, which is something that used to be available to the public, but is no longer the case. It hasn't been ever since COVID. MLB took over a lot of things, and they have kept that private ever since. But the most recent published version was 2019, and it was still in that version as well. You can see right here, under definition of terms for a fair ball, it says, when in contact with the ground, a ball must be in contact with fair territory, and not merely over fair territory in order to be adjudged as fair. It's pretty cut and dry right there. They are saying this is how this should be called, and when you look at the way the rule has been applied, it has not been applied correctly. And so this call has been made multiple times in the last few years, and each time, by the letter of the law, it has been wrong. But the issue is it's not wrong by the official baseball rulebook. It's only wrong by the MLB Umpires Manual, which is not public information. Now, it is information that MLB umpires, of course, have access to. But this call has been made very consistently and consistently wrong, according to the league. So because the wording for fair or foul in the rulebook is so utterly confusing, I decided to further confuse you by turning the rule into a flow chart here, which just goes to show you how convoluted this rule is. So, taking a look at this flow chart here, let's go ahead and find our ball that was called fair in the Padres game. So, it was a batted ball, yes. Did it go to the outfield on the fly? No. Did it contact the ground between first and third? Yes. Did it settle between home and first or home and third? We're saying no because it landed in foul ground, right? So we say no. Did it touch the person of an umpire or player over fair territory? It did. There is no question. Ty France goes down, picks up that ball while it is over fair territory. Yes. And so in this case, according to the rule, it is a fair ball. That is what the rule book says, and that is why umpires have called this consistently as a fair ball. However, they offered a clarification, And we've looked at this clarification in the MLB umpire's manual, where it says if the ball is in contact with the ground, a ball must be in contact with fair territory and not merely over fair territory in order to be adjudged as fair. So, turning back to this flow chart here, which I solely made from the official baseball rulebook, it does not include the information here because according to this, it did touch the person of an umpire or player over fair territory and thus is a fair ball. They went ahead and clarified if it's touching the ground specifically, then it also needs to be touching fair territory, not just over. And so they are literally contradicting the very rule in the rule book. It says over in the rule book, but they have said in the umpire's manual that that is not how it is to be called. Now, there is a further clarification that really no one is talking about, and it's pretty understandable because this clarification is specifically to be considered for fly balls, which this was not, and none of the times where this has been called incorrectly, it was a fly ball. Each time it has been a ground ball. However, I do actually think that this rule offers some relevance to this situation. It is a clarification under the fair ball section of the official baseball rules book. It says if a fly ball lands in the infield between home and first base or home and third base and then bounces to foul territory without touching a player or umpire and before passing first or third base, it's a foul ball. Now, the part that I want to look at here is the part that begins after the semicolon, where it says, or if the ball settles on foul territory or is touched by a player on foul territory, it is a foul ball. That is what has happened here. We have had a case where the ball was touched on foul territory. But what has not happened is a fly ball. So why is this relevant? Well, if we are to interpret that semicolon as saying that we are still in the same sentence, then the sentence would go as thus. If a fly ball lands in the infield between home and first base or home and third base, and then settles on foul territory or is touched by a player on foul territory, it is a foul ball. So that would be pretty relevant here aside from the fly ball aspect. A fly ball on the infield and a ground ball on the infield in this particular part should not be treated any differently. Of course, there is things like a pop fly and the way that if a ball hits on the ground in between first and third and then goes foul, that's foul, but hits in the outfield and then goes foul, that's fair, right? But if you think about it, a ball along the infield settling, it does not matter how high it went before it settled there. And so let's say that we call this a ground ball instead now. If a ground ball lands in the infield between home and first base or home and third base and then settles on foul territory or is touched by a player on foul territory, it is a foul ball. So there we have it. That's basically the exact same thing that they offered in the clarification in the MLB umpire's manual, but instead it's right there in the baseball rulebook. But again, it's so poorly worded, it's so hidden because it's talking about a fly ball, and then even still we've got the weird sentence structure causing further confusion there. But I think that might offer something somewhat relevant to this situation, and it's right there in the rulebook. But again, it is just so poorly worded. I do not fault the umpires. I think it's very interesting how consistently umpires have called this way to the point that it's almost made it so that the rule doesn't matter if umpires are going to call it that way. But if MLB wants to step in and change this, they certainly can going forward. And that seems to be what they're going to try to do. We will see if umpires respond. This play doesn't come up that often. It's only been once every few years. It did happen twice in 2021, but it is not a super regular occurrence, but it was an interesting one, and I thought it was worthy of discussion, and we have discussed it pretty thoroughly here. So that's why the league says MLB umpires are calling it incorrectly, but they have called it that way for a long time, and it is entirely the fault of the rule book and thus of the league. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Reading Up on the Rules with Read the Rules Guy. My expertise lies in the worlds of soccer, baseball, and football, and I hope to bring you more analysis like this regularly on controversial calls and rule applications so we can all better understand the rules of sports. Remember that we all have a bias. Just try and make yours for the unbiased. Thanks for watching.